Content warning. This podcast contains bones, blood, smut, and swear words.
Before we get into the good shit this week, we wanted to remind you that we've launched a Patreon. For just a few bucks a month, you get extended games, brand new content, access to our notes and murder boards, and much more. So if you would like to officially sponsor Marie's TikTok habit, you can head to patreon.com/frontlinefifth or follow the link in the show notes. Okay, now back to that sweet, sweet Bone Zone action.
Act 1. Welcome, penitents. Hello and welcome to the Frontline Fifth, a Locked Tomb podcast where a pair of newly minted lictors explore the Locked Tomb series for the first time, while a couple of dried-out bone witches cackle over how little they really know. We're currently reading Harrow the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, and this week we're taking a brief break from vomiting to follow God into the loading bay that holds chapters 1 and 2. I'm Marie, and I'm proud to say I've never puked on God. What about you, Hannah? What's your most embarrassing bodily excretion story?
I'm not a puker. I'm a peer. I'm one who laughs so hard that they pee on like a very on a very regular basis. So that would be mine. Sometimes I end up laugh crying, rolling on the ground, and then hauling myself off to change my underwear. You're welcome.
That's kind of the cutest thing.
We're also joined today by our own little 17-year-old lictors, Brooke and John. Brooke, John, have you ever vomited on God? If not, what's the closest you've gotten to that level of mortification?
Are you asking us for our most embarrassing moment in our lives? Because I don't think I need to share that.
I've got a couple of great vomiting stories.
Can you share instead?
Yeah, go first, Marie.
Well, the first thing that is one of my favorite stories to tell about my best friend who listens to this, and I tell this story about you all the time, is that...
Wait, this is supposed to be a story about you, not your friend.
Oh, but
no,
it's
I
both.
want it. Tell.
Both. Okay, so I, followed in the footsteps of everybody who grows up in Southeast Idaho, and I was pregnant at 22. So I was still in my master's program. There was this nice man who was very new to our department, and he was teaching a seminar class that started at 8 a.m. And everybody in my class knew that I was, very early pregnancy. And so they would watch me in this seminar class turn green as we sat there at 8 o'clock in the morning. And my best friend thought this was the fucking funniest thing she had ever seen. She thought it was hilarious that I was pregnant. Everybody who is my peer in the class knows what's going on. This poor new professor who has no reason to know why I look ill every morning has no idea. And so one day I look particularly bad. I'm taking a real long time to clear up my stuff. She's waiting for me. And he just kind of goes, are you okay? And my friend blurts out, "She's got a parasite!" And this poor man looked so concerned. And I was like, "It's okay. I'm just pregnant." But yeah, I did during that pregnancy, have a moment where, and also this was with a stick shift. I was driving a Jeep Liberty, was backing out of out of my parking space, was oh no, opened the door, vomited out the door, closed the door, and kept on driving.
That is some Fast and Furious shit. I feel like Vin Diesel could not pull that off.
No, I have done the same thing of if I have vomited in a place I wasn't supposed to, I managed to get myself to a place where it wasn't going to be terribly embarrassing. You are stopping this car. I am opening the door. I am puking in front of somebody's house. But then you drive up and you're fine. Now, I don't consider that all embarrassing or mortifying. I farted in a yoga class, and that's mortifying.
Amazing. In God's face, probably. I like it. John, do you have one?
Not really. The closest I've gotten is just that whenever I went to visit my now wife when, she was living across the country, I would always get there and immediately eat like, 2 In-N-Out burgers or like a burrito or something. And so inevitably, I would have a upset stomach the next day. So every time I came to visit her, the next day I would just be like, oh, I don't feel so great. And she's like, yeah, you just ate 2 like animal style cheeseburgers within 3 hours of landing. You probably deserve that.
Stop pounding California burritos. I know they're delicious.
There's only so much you can handle. You have to wean your way into that.
Before we follow the Emperor deeper into the Erebos, what did you all think of our first real chapters of Harrow the Ninth?
I'm like really on edge. Harrow's super unwell. We have a hallucination as a character, which is new for me, and I don't know how to process like my feelings towards the Emperor is not acting super suspicious, which in itself feels suspicious.
He's not acting suspicious, therefore he is suspicious.
And clearly I cannot drink the wine in front of you.
We have been absolutely ruined at this point.
Thank you. And like very little was making sense on like the last page or so of chapter 2. And so I'm just on edge. I'm not feeling particularly great about it at this moment. I'm just like, what the fuck is happening?
I think in a similar vein, I know we talked about this last week, but just we didn't quite know what we were stepping into when we got into Gideon, and now we have like a foundation of just the level of like things can get really fucked up really quickly, and now we're just like on edge. In fact, it's almost worse now because we're just like, oh, something bad could happen. No character is sacred. It'd be like reading Game of Thrones, but like knowing ahead of time, like they just randomly kill off characters. Like that's how I feel right now. Like anybody can die.
Don't get attached.
Yeah. And also we already know the Emperor is going to die because that was spoiled like literally.
The prologue, the night before the Emperor's murder. The title of the first of the prologue.
I'm antsy. I don't like this. I'm enjoying it, but like it's, yeah.
I'm enjoying it, but I don't like it.
This all makes sense to me. My thoughts about this first chapter are so silly because I'm used to this. I know what happens in Harrow, so I'm not having the same reaction as Brooke and John, but I'm really enjoying little details right now. And so like one of the big things that I'm enjoying actually is the aesthetics. I got really excited about these coffins of bone with skin taut over them. Like I got really excited about in the elevator, there's like a beautiful, bone masterpiece like over the door. I just kind of want to be an interior decorator in this world. What about you, Marie?
Set
For the
design.
ambiance. I feel really bad that we're stepping slowly into this book because again, I devoured these books and I feel like it's gonna be hard to stay like uncertain and not rush through and be like, what is going on?
You're going to have so much fun. I'm excited.
Honestly, so when we started Gideon the Ninth, I would say it was super easy to do 2 chapters a week for the first several episodes. I think it was around like chapter 12 where things started getting good and it started being a little harder to do it. But like we're kind of at the point where it's just like there's so much unknown and we know we're accustomed to this world now. We have like it feels like there's some skin in the game and we have favorite characters and stuff like that. And now it's just becoming a little torturous.
We have 3 chapters next week, which I'm very excited about. Yeah, speak for yourself. This whole thing has been an exercise in patience for me, which is good because I need to learn how to be more patient. But good God, would I have just ripped through these books?
Personal growth through a podcast. Who would have thunk?
Yeah, that doesn't sound right.
Okay, we have our meme watch. Again, memes/references. We use the same terminology.
Oh, yeah, if they're literary references, I got 0 chance. I only have a chance, really, if it's a Mean Girl reference.
Okay, well, the first one is a literary reference, so sucks to suck. The Emperor says, "Why have we not an immortal soul? I would give gladly all the hundreds of years that I have to live to be a human being only for one day." And that is The Little Mermaid. The OG Little Mermaid, Hans Christian Andersen.
Are you fucking kidding?
Yep.
Oh, so this is not
amazing.
from the Disney movie. It wasn't
not the Disney
transcribed.
movie. It's the fairy tale.
Aw. So are we saying that the Emperor is akin to a mermaid?
Well, at the very least, in the context of like living for a really long time, but maybe giving up other important pieces of himself, God's self.
Yeah.
Right, because that's the twist in Hans Christian Andersen, is that mermaids don't have a soul. Right? So not only do they not have legs, they also don't have a soul.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
The soul is kept in the legs, obviously.
Obviously. I think that
That's
is
what
the
the patella's
implication.
for. No one tells
Only thing
you.
I knew about the Hans Christian Andersen version is that she turns into sea foam at the end. It doesn't have her happily ever after, but I didn't know about the no soul thing. No soul.
Well, because that's what it means is
And she's a
why have
redhead.
we not an immortal soul? So this is
She's
like
a
the
redhead?
mermaids talking, and she's a redhead.
No.
Stop it! I don't think she's a redhead in the fairy tale, is she?
I don't know.
But anyway, the other one, which I'm not completely sure is a meme, but I do think that it's very funny, is a kind of question of like, would you take some sum of money, but the caveat is that you have a poisonous snail that as soon as it touches you, you will die, right? And it's a smart snail; it can find you wherever you go, but it's just going really slowly. It's going at snail pace, so you can definitely outrun it, but it's going to catch up with you. And I feel like that's the resurrection beasts.
Hell yeah, it is. You
Why
can
have I
run,
never
but you
heard
can't hide.
from the poisonous snail?
Oh my god, this has been discussed to death on Reddit and the internet, so I've seen this way too much. But yeah, I've seen it being $1 billion, in which case this is laughably easy, and I think anybody who can't figure out how to get away from a snail doesn't deserve $1 billion.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
How long has this been around?
That's a good question, because it might not be an on purpose like meme. It might just be like a coincidence.
I love a would you rather though. Like, and
At least
I agree
10
with John.
years.
I feel like this is an easy would you rather, because you can buy a private jet, or in the case of the Emperor, a large spaceship called the Erebos.
Or a flying dirigible? Just buy the Goodyear blimp and stay in the skies.
Oh my god, I didn't even think about that. Just don't touch down.
Can't
Ooh,
go home again.
You got to make sure that the snail didn't get on board, though. Otherwise, you're fucked.
You're fucked.
Well, without further ado, please strap your great swords to your backs and follow us as we present Episode 2 of Harrow the Ninth, The Dubious Privileges of the First House. Act 2, God stood in your doorway.
This section of Frontline Fifth is safe for anyone who hasn't read past Chapter 2 in Harrow the Ninth.
Let's recap. Chapter 1, Ninth House Skull. 9 months before the Emperor's murder. The sword hates you, you hide your face, you vomit. Chapter 2, Ninth House Skull. 9 months before the Emperor's murder. Our Resurrector renews the ninth. Empty coffins, planetary revenants, you can't go home again.
All right, so 9 months before the Emperor's murder, you are, which is to say Harrow, is in a hospital room on the spaceship Erebos. And she has a sword which hates her, and the hate burns so strongly that it physically hurts to touch it, but something in her needs to touch it, so she covers her palms with cartilage, she sprouts bones from her arms to help it hold steady, and every time she touches it, she ends up violently vomiting. And
Super
so
metal.
this whole first chapter is just she's living for some time in that hospital room, alternately carrying the sword and puking everywhere. She sleeps next to the sword when she realizes that she doesn't have her face paint on and that she doesn't have access to like the correct blessed grease paint. She paints it with her own blood and covers herself.
Which, as Brooke said, is very metal.
Very metal.
And covers herself with a ripped up hospital bedsheet. And sometimes she loses time. She finds herself standing, staring at the sword in the ground, not remembering how she got there. And whenever this happens, the body comes and comforts her.
Good job pronouncing that with a capital B.
You did pull that off. Brooke, you said specifically that like this hallucination thing was something that you're kind of sitting with and thinking about. Can you tell us about it?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily super strong in this chapter because at the moment you're still... Well, no, that's not true exactly because we start getting introduced to the body as a kind of soothing aspect, right? She's coming over and putting her cold hands over her eyes to kind of soothe her rage and confusion or whatever is happening internally that's causing her so much angst. But it really starts developing more even the second chapter, especially when we give it a voice, right? Like this is this is in some way a fully formed psyche. which is something that I would have feelings about normally of, is this a person I like or don't like, even just on the bare face of it? And how do you do that about something that you've kind of been led to believe is not real, is just a figment of someone's imagination?
What do you think about the whole thing with the sword? It's like she can't touch it. She keeps trying to touch it. It's important. She has like all of this ritual and stuff about it. It also, this line creeps me out, but I love it. Of like, they had tried to remove your sword once. They had tried to take it away on some pretext you could not exactly remember, and you were perturbed in some distant way by that memory, which was red and wet and ill-defined.
Fuck, this girl committed murder.
I think that she's like still somehow like really fucking terrifying. Like maybe she has lictor powers, maybe she doesn't. Like it's like we're still like, what is going on?
Well, I think it's clear actually that she does have lictor powers in terms of
being able to manipulate her own bones that way.
Exactly. I love that she sprouts bones from her own bones and makes them into fully articulated hands to hold onto the sword with her. It's fucking bonkers.
I have maybe a not fair question for you guys, and you can answer this on a scale.
Yeah, there you go. Practice your faces, get them locked in place.
So in Fuck, Marry, Kill, Resurrect, you added the sword as a character. Is this because you guys just like the sword a la Teacher, and this is like you guys emphasizing an overly important character that I'm going to base a lot of conspiracy theories around? Or is this like, are we closer to Teacher, or are we closer to like a
He's trying to figure out if you guys are leading us on more than we would have been otherwise.
I'm not going to answer the question the way that you want it to, but I'm just going to point out that in this chapter, the sword feels like an entity and not just an object.
All right.
It can exhibit hate, right? I mean, it fucking hates her.
All right, cool. That feeds my conspiracy theory. Thank you.
You're welcome. Also, Harrow can feel the bodies of the 708 living people on board, and she can differentiate the ones that are necromancers versus the ones that aren't because their hearts squeeze differently.
God, the whole like visceral, squishy, gushy heart thing.
Right, like she was like really disturbed by it because she could hear the ka-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. She could hear the drumming.
Except it's more
and she was like,
squelchy than that. It's described as more wet than that.
Yeah.
Tamsin loves describing things in gory, wet detail.
Yes. Yes. Gory, wet detail is Tamsin.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I find this really sad. Like, there's constantly people around her, like, checking the machines and whatever, but they are described not as people. They're just, like, things in the background. And it's very different, actually. Almost these bodies she can sense are almost described as like more
alive,
human and more close to her. And it just is so fucking isolating that she's there without any of the things that make her feel safe or home, right? She's literally painting her own face in her own blood so she can feel safe.
Snuggling with a sword that hates her.
Yeah. And so alone amidst all these people. It just is like brutal.
It's really funny because at the same time I've been reading this, I'm watching Invincible, the show on Amazon.
Not familiar.
Basically, Superman character comes to Earth, has a kid who's half human, half super person. Part of the whole thing is just like, how do you deal with being a god among people?
A demigod.
Right? Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I'm fairly sure there's a whole host of Greek mythology that we could pull from this.
This was just the most relevant example on top of mind, but like it's funny watching or listening to how Harrow describes them because it's like, how do you remain grounded when you're like kind of just a god, right? Like she could just like
squelch him.
It would cost her almost nothing to just like destroy this entire spaceship. Yeah, like exactly. Yeah, like how do you deal when you're a boot and you're surrounded by ants, right? Like it's anyway.
The attendants that are around in the background are also talking, and she's like picking up little things. It's described as almost like prayers that they're like mumbling under their breath, right? But I think that's just how Harrow's interpreting it.
Right.
Well, because the thing that she's used to hearing in the background are the muttering and mumbling of prayers.
Yeah.
I find that interesting. Yeah.
And instead, it's so clearly things that are something about like restocking for military things. And of course, the cohort in the Locked Tomb series uses things like blood and bone. So it's things like 1,000 kilos of osseo, old, keep that. No, it's the first thing we run out of, like dump that stock, 3,000 units, replenish. Like they're preparing in the background and running this like very organized ship. It tells you right away, I feel like, that you're on a cohort ship.
Okay, is that what it's doing? Because I spent a little time mulling this over and being like, are there clues to pick out of this? I didn't come up with anything.
I was just going to say 1,000 kilos of bone is like over a ton of bone. Like that is so much bone.
Yeah.
Like, why would you need that much bone? I guess maybe not
It's
everyone.
a lot of dead people.
No, yeah. My question was
not-
not about why do you need it. It's where did you get it from?
Well, yeah,
That
but I guess
additionally.
not everyone's as good as Harrow, right? Like Harrow's like whole thing is
Exactly.
like she can grow bone, and that's like not like a normal necromancer thing.
That's a good point. How do we explain
Yeah,
that conservation of mass?
Well, try not to add physics into it.
Thanks.
But you're right. Like normally, like people maybe need a whole skeleton to make a skeletal construct. So that automatically is much more than Harrow would need. But additionally, I had a point deep in there. Oh, one of the things that's in like the glossary of Gideon the Ninth that, when we were skimming through that I noticed I thought was interesting is that bone is the only thing that like stores the energy so that you can't, not that you'd want to keep bodies on board because I think they would be grosser, but it would not actually be like a useful source of the
To have
energy
sacks of
necessarily in the
skin.
same way that bone is. Yeah. Gross. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I'm guessing also like if you're transporting necromancers through space, right? And they don't like being in space without their power, so like maybe we just like literally put them in like a bone cocoon so that they feel like some energy. Or I don't know. There's a lot of uses for bone in a world where it can store death energy.
Yeah, so among all of this, God is coming to visit Harrow periodically, and one day he comes and wants to show her something because he's trying to trigger her readiness. He tells her later that, he would let her kind of figure this out, whatever shock it is that she's going through, but he really needs her. He needs her to be a lictor, and so he's going to try and he wants to show her something. And the officers around him keep trying to like keep him on task and tell him things and tell him he needs to go to this meeting, and he's just like, oh my God, as if any meeting ever finished or even got started after 10 minutes, In particular, the Saint of Joy seems to have given some sort of order that countermands God's. And he was like, her orders are the orders of God, except for
Right now.
And he tells them to put like whoever most recently graduated Trentum. So like whoever is lowest in kind of like this order to go on this Steely and tell them to make static noises if she keeps it up with all of these orders.
He gave pretty good instructions for how to make static noises. Did you guys try it?
Wait, do it.
Okay. It's described as air blowing through the teeth, tongue high, and the hand flaps up and down. So,
Oh my God, that is good. Oh, well done, Brooke.
Well done.
Well done, God, as well. Good gosh. I also I have complicated feelings about God, which is partially because I have complicated feelings about gods in general. That's like a more broader thing that we can get into my psychology.
let's get into it.
Right? But this is a moment when I deeply appreciate God as a person. I fucking love that he's like, okay, look, I know she's important. She's a lictor. You should follow her orders. But for the moment, we just need to fucking prank her. Like, there's no, like.
I know, this is my point of like, God is seeming super cool, and I don't trust that. There's
just a
no
chill
way.
dude.
He's a super chill god.
He does say he's not human, so maybe, but how do you act so human?
My straight up belief is that everyone in here is a nicely complicated character. I think Tamsin got it done. So, no big assumptions about anyone.
She's not a fan of black and white characters.
No. The officers are trying to get God to go to this meeting that started 10 minutes ago. And he's like, what? We're not doing that. I'm going to go do this other thing that I've decided. I love this so much that like it makes him into this thing where nobody will countermand him, right? Like everybody's like,
'Cause
oh
he's
yeah,
God.
like he's God, he's the emperor, but also they're like trying to like manage
You really
him.
should,
And it's
Like,
just
no.
it's so funny and weird.
It's also like classic managing up, where you're like trying to
Uh-huh.
very politely encourage your superior to do the thing they're supposed to do.
that they need
Yeah.
to do in order for the whole system to function.
Yeah, everybody's trying to manage up. That's perfect. And it's not working. And instead he tells Harrow to come with him, and she won't leave the sword behind, of course, but she also can't carry it because, noodle arms and a necromancer. So she like rolls over on it and then straps it to her back with bone. And that's how she follows him out the door. So it's like she's in this turquoise hospital gown. So it's like that weird green color of hospital like scrubs, that she's in a hospital gown that's like that color with a ripped up sheet over her face, but not like actually like a cloak, apparently, with a
I'm just imagining her
two-hander
as a
sword
ghost
stuck to her back. I know, two-hander sword stuck to her back with blood on her face. And I'm like...
Well, and explicitly, it's like, it says that she looked like an imbecile. And I feel like it is like, that's how she feels right now. Like, she's like, ugh.
I feel like you would get used to it in this universe. You're like, oh yeah, it's just a slightly weirder Tuesday or something.
Yeah, I think so. So again, Harrow can feel the 708 living people on board, but she can also feel the thanergy from 10 dead people frozen in time by the Emperor. And he takes her down to the second cargo hold, and then everybody like scuttles away. Like, our joyful prince has chosen to grace the second cargo hold. And then everybody just like,
fucking love it.
like scuttles away.
It's such a funny thing to have like a god in real life, right? I mean, like, it's moving amongst all these like normal people in this very normal cargo hold. And also, I don't know, this is like a nice reminder that this shit is in space, which we were, advertised in Gideon, but didn't really happen in Gideon. It's just a weird picture altogether, start to finish.
And down in this cargo hold, what he wants to show her are the hundreds and hundreds of coffins of bone, each covered with thin skin, thin enough that it's like you can see the faces through the thin membrane of skin. And each of these weird bone skin coffins holds a person, and a person who has been in stasis, sleeping for the 10,000 years since the resurrection, and who the Emperor is now going to send back to seed to renew the 9th house.
That's just like an outrageous little thing to drop. It's like, yeah, they've just been here for 10,000 years, and I haven't done anything with them.
I have so many thoughts. That's a lot of fucking bodies. Where is he storing them? And like the intimation is that there are many more. Are they just like, okay, I would also like to be clear. This is what I would do. Not necessarily what he would do. And I don't think we ever find out what he has done. I would leave them in a random spot in space that you like could coordinate to, but it's just an empty area where you just have just millions of floating corpses that you could come and just like scoop a couple up at a time. It'd be much more efficient storage.
Out of the anti-gravity of
That's
space.
much more efficient storage than keeping them on spaceships or something. Okay, go on.
You're saying just like put them in like the space equivalent of like a bait box where you just like need to come up, just like bring the net out, just scoop like 10 and...
Yeah, exactly.
I had issues with this because he's like, I kept them as insurance. Like insurance... Like,
right, insurance against what?
Honestly, that part didn't bother me.
The only two possibilities of insurance are like... Well, so the insurance is like in case like the houses start to fail, in which case he has a backup plan. Like that's like good person insurance. And the bad person insurance is like, oh, like the 9th houses are like, in my mind, rebelling, or like I need like something to like some form of leverage. And so like I can...
Right, you could raise an army.
Yeah, I have my own like backup houses to replace these people if I ever need to.
Oh yeah, in my head immediately I was just like, oh yeah, like in case like your whole like plan of being God to a whole bunch of people like goes completely south, you have a second chance to try again and learn from your mistakes. I love a second try. I love a Control Z.
Who knows what he means? He just says insurance, and we walk right past it.
I also want to point out like a weird little wording thing, which maybe I'm reading too much into, but I think it's interesting. The way Harrow says you committed resurrection, it like almost sounds like you did a war crime. Like I feel like we mostly use commit for crimes. Like, and that's not universal.
Commit atrocities.
Right? It's like, it's just, there was something about the way she said, oh my God, you've committed resurrection. And like, it is also... has performed an ultimate miracle, but it just like felt a little bit like, ooh.
You also say you commit to memory. So I just think it means something that's like a very permanent action.
Also, we're going to find out there is an insane cost to resurrection here in about 8 paragraphs. So
checks out.
Yeah, but it is a little premature for her to phrase it that way without already knowing about the resurrection beasts.
She's walking through these coffins. She's committing their faces to memory. And she's, kind of like looking at like her new house, right? Beyond the new denizens of the night, there are also a number of very different stone coffins draped in house colors. And these are the bodies that are frozen in time that she felt earlier, but there's discrepancies. Several of the caskets are empty. So there's an empty second house, third house, sixth house, and a sixth house casket that just has little bits of body in it.
Oh, horror.
And Harrow is kind of asking him about this. I think she questions like, won't the houses be like, why are these empty? And he'll be like, that's one of the great things about being God.
You just don't have to explain.
You don't have to explain yourself. And she says, well, why don't you just resurrect them? And he says he can't because the cost is too great, and it's the same reason that Harrow can't go home again. And so now we get our little lesson in necromancy. So our lesson is that when someone dies gradually, slowly, like from a long illness, their soul is pulled directly into the river.
By liminal osmosis.
Love that. And then if somebody dies suddenly and violently, the apopneumatic shock creates enough energy to counteract the liminal osmosis that usually draws souls into the river, and they can become a revenant.
Do we want to undergo the roots of some of these words?
Apoptosis, right? So
I was feeling a cross from apoptosis and pneumatic, which is like pressure.
What is apo actually?
Separation, detachment, removal. So how does apoptosis make sense?
ptosis is falling or a fall.
Or related to the spirit. I didn't know that about pneumatic.
Oh, air, breath, or spirit?
Yeah, but I guess in the New Testament, they use it when talking about the spirit.
Well, tearing away of the spirit would work well as the...
Yep. Makes perfect sense. Yeah. Okay.
All right, carrying on.
That was our SAT prep for today. And so now he asks, so he's asking this to Harrow in like a Socratic discussion, and she was like, these are baby, like second grade questions.
The fuck do you take me for? I'm not a 5-year-old.
But there's also this part of her that's like, this has to be a trick question, right? Like, you've got to be getting at something underneath, like, because the answer's so obvious, it would be stupid to ask.
And he is. So he says, what happens when you kill a planet? Because he basically asks, like, what has a soul? And then this is where you get the Little Mermaid quote.
I also love, she's answering a lot of these questions to the body instead of to the emperor. She's like looking at the body and saying things like, but you can't count all the microbial life as one soul on a planet. That's insane. And God's like, actually you can. And Marie's like, actually you can.
This is something fun to look up later, is the Gaia hypothesis, which is just, it's put out by like basically microbiologists, that you can consider Earth as like one kind of organism in a way because everything is so connected. Anyway, we're kind of taking that hypothesis and saying, okay, if everything is so connected down to microbial life, then a planet has
an alien microbiome.
You have a communal soul made up of all of the life on it, kind of no different than any multicellular organism.
I love the casual, just like, yeah, life is on every planet.
Right? They're like, okay, cool. Love that we've figured that out. So when the cohort approaches a new planet, they have to convert it from a thalergenic to a thanergenic planet so that necromancy will work. And they slowly introduce thanergetic decay, and the planet slowly dies and its soul slips into the river. But what happens when you kill the planet all at once and you have that apopneumatic shock? You get a revenant. Always a goddamn revenant. And those are resurrection beasts, honey.
I feel like we should pause and do some sort of like massive applause break for John, who called that
we're lictoring the soul of a planet.
Well done, John. There's some dead
enormous
planets roaming about. They are resurrection beasts.
We're putting that one in the win column.
Oh, yeah.
We have a lot
Big
more
win.
losses than wins, but we're taking this one, yeah.
Big W.
Resurrection beasts feed on thalergenic planets in their wake like vampires, and they won't stop until God and the 9 houses are dead. They hunt anyone who has committed the indelible sin of lictorhood. And so God has lost half his lictors in the desperate attempt to fight them. They've killed 5 of the 9 by luck, sheer accident, or suicide mission. And God has been running from them for 10,000 years. There's 3 left. Don't do any basic arithmetic. And the body is there with Harrow. and she speaks, which is a big deal because the body hasn't spoken to Harrow since her parents died. In fact, she only walked with Harrow for a year with her eyes black, and after that she only appeared silently in Harrow's dreams. And now she's around all the time and her eyes are yellow.
Her additional Gideon features include she carries a sword, she has a low, husky voice, and she walks a half step behind Harrow.
How do we know that Gideon has a low, husky voice?
Calling it.
Okay.
But so it's interesting. So the body, like, I also, again, I find this so interesting. Like, the body has been with her whole life, but for huge periods, it's only been with her in her dreams. And even when it was there, it didn't speak. And it's so interesting the way it speaks now, because not only does it have a whole conversation with her out of nowhere, but its voice is like the voice of people that Harrow has known. It's described as like, it's got elements of Marshall Crux's voice and her mother's voice and stuff. It's, yeah.
What the body tells her is, what he is saying is that you have to learn that sword. And Harrow says, I can't, beloved, it's gone. And the body says, you are walking down a long passage. You need to turn around. And Harrow says, I am standing in the dark. I lost it. It's gone. There's nothing there. I must have misapprehended the process. I am half a lictor. I am nothing. I'm pointless. I am unmanned. And God thinks she's talking to him.
To be fair, there's like this interesting thing happening where the body is not just interacting with Harrow. She's interacting with what God says too. Like,
that's true. Like, the body knows what God is talking to Harrow about. It's not like an unrelated hallucination.
And earlier, it was like, I didn't even catch this until I was kind of reviewing things in preparation for the episode. When Harrow asks, how many revenants are there? The response right after it is, the body raised its eyebrows when the Emperor Undying said 3. Like, what the fuck? Okay, now go for the really confusing part, Marie.
God tells Harrow that Ortus Nigenad didn't die for nothing, and Harrow experiences a sharp pain, and she tells God that Ortus died thinking it was the only gift he was capable of giving, and that she has wasted it, like air. And God looks confused and says, Ortus Nigenad. Again, that Harrow just passes out.
Without vomiting on him.
Good for her. Congrats. A round of applause for Harrow here.
Well, Harrow's out cold on the ground of the loading bay, so it looks like it's time for a game.
Woo! Whee!
Interstitial. We called them resurrection beasts. It looks like the big bad this season is a gang of vengeful planetary revenants. I get it. Dying isn't great. But is it really justification for following some poor god around for 10,000 years, eating up all the thalergenic planets in your wake? Well, we're going to get into some revenge fantasies in this week's game, The Haunting. This week, I'm asking each of our hosts to come up with some detailed plans for their future hauntings. So friends, what revenge fantasy are you playing out all your afterlife? So the game goes like this. We need to know who wronged you and the details of how they wronged you, the circumstances of your death, and then how you manifest your haunting. Like, what do you look like and what are you doing? Let's start with Brooke.
Look, if I'm a revenant, it's probably because someone I didn't know very well murdered me for asking too many probing questions. But I'm not a vengeful person. Like, that's just not me. And honestly, haunting somebody that, like, you know, I don't particularly know and don't particularly like kind of sounds like a self-own. So I'm not haunting them. I'm not haunting the person who murdered
out.
Me. I instead would love to haunt my brother. Partly because he makes a lot of nice music, like, all the time. So it'd be an enjoyable place to be haunting. And I really love giving him unsolicited advice. So I think that I would
be like over his shoulder being like,
I genuinely
I think
see
you
myself
really could have done it this way.
Yes, I genuinely see myself in the form of my spirit animal, which is like it's probably like a stoat or an ermine, and I'm just draped across his shoulders the entire time.
Fucking cute.
This is
so
wonderful.
Giving my opinions on everything.
So, okay, sorry, I have to go next though, because this is Brooke sort of took my haunting style just a little bit. Except mine is pettier because I'm an asshole. So the people who wronged me is like anyone in my entire life who cut me off in traffic, anybody who like, you know, kind of smirked when I asked a question, everybody who was a dick to anyone else in front of me, because I really fucking can't stand people who are mean to each other, right? I die in some I probably die really boringly. I'm probably really old. I die in bed. It's genuinely tragic for me as a person who wants to go via hippo. But I come back and split my soul into a million fragments and haunt every douchebag, any douchebag, literally just by making passive-aggressive comments over their shoulder where you're like, ooh, really? You're going to do that? Like, for literally the rest of their lives.
Fly on the wall judging.
I
enjoy that immensely.
Okay.
You're not an angel or a devil on the shoulder. You're just a pain in the ass.
You're just a judgeful bitch. I love it. I want to be with you too. I'll go on vacation with you on occasion.
Yes, I like the idea of you going on vacation from being draped around. You know, like that's beautiful. Okay, we'll meet up, Brooke. I'll see you then.
Great, thanks.
Okay, what's going on with you, John?
So I feel like the way that I'm going to die, well, statistically, I'm definitely dying before my wife, just as a man. But I feel like I'm probably dying via like food poisoning. Like one of my dreams is
it's from all those In-N-Out burgers.
Are you saying your wife poisoned you?
No,
that's
no.
classic.
I'm saying that like I love like American junk food, like pizza, burgers, fries, burritos. Like if I
then
did,
you're
like,
totally getting heart failure and having a heart attack.
If I did like food reviews, it wouldn't be Michelin stars. It would literally just be like cheesesteak places and everything else. And so like I would eventually end
Guy
up
Fieri style.
Yeah,
Respect.
like diners, drive-ins, and dives. Yes, exactly. So I feel like eventually I would get like a bad batch of something, and I'm just gonna die of dysentery, cholera. Something like not cholera. What am I looking for? The thing that like you have to occasionally recall lettuce for.
E. coli.
Yeah, like E. coli.
Yeah,
Listeria.
Something gets me like that. And so then I'm haunting the shitty food purveyors of America is basically where I think I probably in a similar vein to Hannah, where it's like, do you really want to like
Are you
not
sure
wash
you
your
want to
hands?
sneeze onto that chicken?
or not even that, just like or like questionable food choices, like do we really need like a mango chutney on this pizza or like something, I don't know, like some like when people make terrible food decisions, that's what I'm haunting.
Oh, so you're just gonna food critic as a ghost?
Yes.
Why would you do that?
Nobody is asking for blue cheese on
anything.
Yeah.
Why is blue cheese so popular?
Why is truffle on everything?
God, thank you, Brooke. It's not that good.
Like a tiny
It
dose
literally
of
like
one.
triples the price, and it's like fine.
It's a polarizing.
Blue cheese goes on chicken
substance.
wings, and that's about it.
I want to point out that I got the instructions for this game while I was teaching my night class. And I immediately asked my TAs, and I got one of the best answers from somebody who was like not even questioning why I was asking them this, which, is more of a statement on me than on them probably.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But immediately said tall people.
Oh, that's cool.
So this is someone who's like 5'2", I think, but never thinks of themselves as 5'2", and just immediately hates tall people. She said that the way that they would be haunting is like when they're sleeping on a bed that's like a little too short, they'd always just grab their legs and yank them off the bed, or stand in doorways that they thought that they were going to clear, and then like put their hand so that they like bonk into it anyway.
This is ingenious.
And it was like, that's amazing and so fucking unhinged. And I completely
It's really petty.
It's so petty, and it changes completely how I see you.
It's like I've learned so much about you through this question. I didn't know.
Yeah.
That's fun. It's a good icebreaker.
Yeah. Mine was more on the vein of Hannah's, where the way that I'm dying is honestly, I'm just going to trip over myself. Like I've had this thought that like I'm actually getting legitimately scared of like one set of stairs at my university, because I'm like, I am going to somehow like the way that they are spaced is just off enough that if I am not deadly paying attention, like I'm a clumsy person anyway, but if I'm not paying attention, I'm like, I am going to fall down these stairs and break my neck. So that is how I go. But the people who have wronged me and what I am doing after my death is like, I'm going to be like a poltergeist, like you can't see me type of entity, but it's going to be things like, if you don't put your shopping cart away in the parking lot, I am chasing you after you with the shopping cart until you leave the parking lot and like ramming into you, you know, like if you block the grocery store aisle, if you block the grocery, if you like don't let people zipper merge, I'm going to stall your car. Right there.
Yeah. I love this so much.
Do you know what I mean? Like, if you block grocery aisles, like the entire like top shelf, all of the items for the top shelf are just going to tumble out like on top of you.
Let's push Marie down some stairs. We could use you in this.
Wait a minute.
I like this version of like, you know, it forcing people into better behavior. You're like, they're not going to do it themselves, so they're going to have to learn.
Seems like you need a reminder. Wait, Hannah, how did you die?
Oh, in my sleep at old age.
Then you wouldn't become a revenant, right? I can't even tell you
how disappointed I am.
No, I think just
my
by
disappointment,
force of personality.
my sheer disappointment at not having a cool death that I could.
All right, this is more in the vein of Dr. Sex. Gotcha.
Yes. Yeah. Well, just in case other people don't want, what does this mean?
Bespoke.
Custom.
No, I know what that
custom.
means. But what do we mean just in case other people don't want bespoke?
Well, we just gave our haunting agendas that were very personal to us and customized for our lives. But I thought we might want to make some templates in case other people want to think about their hauntings for the future, but they're not like ready to make their own detailed plan.
Yeah, we've got some suggestions, or we can come up with suggestions for that. So, like, what's the best way to haunt someone who cut you off while you were driving in downtown Boston? I think that I covered that one. I
think you did. I love making it stall. I think that's great.
That one's a good one. The other thing that I would do, which is far more mean, actually, is just screaming every time they start to change lanes.
I like that a lot.
It's so much better too if you've got the like little girl with the long hair like from the well from the Ring just like sitting in the passenger seat just like screaming every time they like I'm
just saying that every time my mom, probably everybody's mom is famous for this when their dad's driving, is like they start to change lanes and mom goes
yes.
And everybody goes what?
Yes. No, I think the best way is anytime it's raining or snowing or any type of inclement weather, you just let the air out of their tires. So they have to like get out into the weather and like fill their tires back up or change their tires.
Wow, that's super malicious.
That's good. That's good. That's
beautiful.
Good. What's the best way to haunt someone who broke your heart?
In their dreams.
You make them. Wait, I gotta. Hang on a second, like flesh this out, because how would it couldn't be your voice, but you would somehow have to like give them just enough of a like weird feeling so that like every single person that they went to date after that, or they just even tried to flirt with or whatever, they got like the ick from.
Okay.
Or everybody reminded them of you.
Yeah.
Well, so I was going to say similarly, I like the idea that you appear in your normal form, just in random places in their life, like the body does to Harrow. So just like everywhere they go, they're like, is that, oh, no, it
and
wasn't.
they get the ick.
Yeah.
No, I think similar in the vein of giving them the ick, just like every time they try to flirt with somebody or do anything, you just like walk behind that person and like breathe like ghost breath down their neck. So it's just like, oh, like, I don't know what's wrong with that person, like your person, but like every time like they come around, I just get like the shivers or something. Like you could just condition the person that they like to associate them with just like goosebumps or like being uncomfortable.
So that everyone else gets the ick every time your heartbreaker like shows up.
Yes.
Like that's the shape of it.
Jeez,
I love
Maurice
that.
is really mean though. It's if you won't take me, you can't have anyone.
I mean, I'm not a nice person.
Brutal.
Carry on.
I think you're great.
What about the best way to haunt someone who stole your bicycle?
There's never any cash in their wallet every time they have any money, like their credit cards are misplaced, like their cash ends up in like a, donation to the hungry like box. Like every time they open their wallet, like I just went to the ATM. No, dude, that
I love this.
I love it a lot.
I really love that.
I think that's beautiful.
I think that's solid.
It's the perfect comeuppance.
There's never any place to actually conveniently park the bicycle.
Yes,
they always
good.
have to be worried, or they never have their own bicycle lock. So, like, you'll make sure that nobody else ever steals that bicycle ever again, that they are stuck with it. Like, something happens that there is never any good reason for them to get another bicycle, but they are always uneasy and worried that the bicycle is going to get stolen because they never have a way to lock it up, or they never have a good place to put it. And so they'll put it in like
irrational
someplace weird.
phobia of their bike, the bike that they stole getting stolen.
Yes. Like they're always going to be like worried that it's going to get stolen. They're always going to be sure that it won't be there wherever they left it, and yet it always is. But they're like always constantly thinking about it.
Vicious.
It's the only thing they think about.
Solid.
What is the best way to haunt someone who tried to call you while you were in the middle of a super dark and intense movie and it totally fucked up the vibes because your ringtone is inexplicably set to Backstreet Boys? I feel like that's a problem with your own life choices.
Is that a personal experience?
I think a previous ghost had set your ringtone to Backstreet Boys so that this would happen. I think this is a whole circle of haunting that's going to happen.
Well, I think then you have to set the Backstreet Boys song as their like wake up morning alarm, because that's the best way to ruin a song.
That's totally true. I keep on setting really songs that I like, and they decay over time. There's like that energetic decay. Yeah, I really like that. I also really like just like fucking up the vibes for all things for the rest of their life in like a, you know, that part where like Harrow jumps into the pool, darts in like a knife, and then comes up spluttering. Like, I want that for like the rest of anytime they like lean in to kiss someone, they like the other person like sneezes in their face. Yeah, exactly.
You know what you have to ask yourself if you're in a Backstreet Boys ghost loop? Am I original? Yeah. Am I the only one? I was very proud of that.
It was solid. It was beautiful.
The fact that
to take off her glasses.
The fact that you will always like go the longest distance for a pun. Like a dumb joke. I love it so much.
In the words of Dr. Cox, it's because I commit. COMMITT.
Well done.
Okay. Act 3. I am standing.
Wait, transition.
Oh, shit. I thought that was a transition. We don't need no stinking transition. With all of that, I think we are really prepared for anything the resurrection beasts might throw at us, so it's time for rampant speculation! Act 3. I am standing in the dark. Our little lictor siblings may be vomit cannons, but even though they're only 17 years old, we know they've got good conspiracy theories. So, Brooke and John, what the fuck is happening?
I like half miss being 17.
I definitely miss being 17.
But not full miss, because high school kind of sucked. Anyway.
I would go back in a heartbeat.
Anyway, Brooke and I spent about 2 hours this week cooking. So
yeah, from like 10 to midnight on a Wednesday night. It was fun. It was good. I'm going to try and organize this a little bit so that we can try. Well, we actually made a beautiful murder board. We shall put that up on Patreon, right?
Yep.
But we will walk through basically kind of what we built out and kind of the fundamental features of this. So the thing that was bothering me the most at the end of these chapters, maybe because it was the most recent, but also it's been a theme for this entire book so far, starting with the Dramatis Personae, is what the fuck is happening with the weird Ortus stuff. So in the Dramatis Personae, we have Ortus capitalized for no good reason. In the Parados, Ortus Nigenad says, have you considered Ortus Nigenad? Who absolutely Ortus Nigenad does not want to be considered. Then we have the Emperor saying, Ortus Nigenad did not die for nothing. But as he spoke, the Emperor's mouth looked strange. As if Ortus Nigenad was not what he was saying. And then we have this last little bit here that I think is what really helped John and I when we were working on our conspiracy theories. The resurrecting king took on an expression of a man working at a very difficult and emotionally taxing anagram. Ortus Nigenad, said the emperor again, almost wondering. And we were like, well, maybe he actually was working at an anagram. Right. Because guess what's in Ortus Nigenad? Well, you can pull out. It's Gideon.
Really?
Oh, dang it. Yes. You can pull Gideon out of Ortus Nigenad. And
you can.
For no other reason, the word Saturn. The letters that are left over, the only thing we can figure out that makes sense, sort of, is Saturn.
Is Gideon Saturn or Saturn Gideon?
Gideon Saturn.
Gideon and Saturn are the two words in Ortus Nigenad.
Anyway,
only two.
The conspiracy theory that we came up with is that Ortus, in capital letters, is a stand-in for the name Gideon.
Which means that in the Dramatis Personae, we got our G and P from the second house.
Yes, so it's not Ortus and Pyrrha. It's actually Gideon and Pyrrha, which means it's the G and P from the note from the first book. So it's either like a brainwash or something like redacted or like a suppression or a grief trigger or something.
Exactly. In chapter 2, Harrow is never referring to, or chapter 1 and chapter 2, Gideon is never referred to even as an illusion. She has been completely suppressed after not even in the prologue or the Parados. She's gone.
It's something after the events of the epilogue of the first book, because we know that she can say Gideon and talk about Gideon in the immediate aftermath of Cannon House. But now, months later, she's now in shock or recovery and can't bring herself to, or
it's either her own brain has suppressed Gideon or everybody has, right? Because what I was thinking was the comment where the emperor said Ortus Nigenad did not die for nothing, and as he spoke, his mouth looked strange, and then he repeats it a few times. It's almost as if his mouth is saying Gideon Nav, maybe, but what's coming out, and even what he's hearing, is Ortus Nigenad, which is a weird little flux situation. Anyway, clearly, we think every time they say Ortus Nigenad, they actually mean Gideon Nav.
Yes, or just Gideon, because also they replaced the third the third
Ortus
lictor.
Equals Gideon.
Yes.
Okay. What happened to Gideon's soul, though? So I think when we were thinking about this last episode, we were kind of like, maybe, actually, I don't know how much you were bought into this conspiracy, John, but I was thinking that in the prologue, Harrow, what she had done was maybe give Gideon's soul back somehow to Gideon's body, which is MIA. And that was kind of what was going on around there. But I don't necessarily know if that's true at this point.
She still has lictor powers.
Sort of.
So what is...
Except that not...
She said she's half a lictor.
Yeah.
She says she's half a lictor, but she definitely seems to be more powerful or have additional things that she did not have in Gideon the Ninth.
Yeah, agreed. And we're not certain that that's necessarily true anymore. In fact, John, you have an interesting theory for where Gideon's soul is.
So I was like, oh, maybe it's actually in the sword. The Gideon soul got put partially into the sword. But now I'm also thinking it might be because there's so much intense hate and everything else. Maybe it's Kitharea's soul actually got in there because they killed Kitharea with the sword.
Stabbed through the heart.
And that would explain the hatred, and it would also, because Kitharea is probably pissed that she can't just go into the afterlife and actually die. She's stuck in a sword.
Oh my god, could you imagine being alive for 10,000 years and then becoming a revenant?
Yeah, getting stuck in the sword.
Once you finally died.
Yeah, but no, or maybe it's just this whole thing is just she's completely suppressed Gideon, and the reason she's half a lictor is she's not connecting with her cavalier, right? Gideon's still in there, so she can still do a little bit of the soul work, but can't be a full lictor because she's not embracing the cavalier. Anyway, well, I'm sure we'll get that answered, but
it seems so more to me like if we want to explain why she's half a lictor, it's partly because she or some other force has suppressed all knowledge of Gideon and all thoughts of Gideon, and therefore she might be half a lictor. She thinks that it's because Ortus was fucking pathetic. It seems like, but it could be just she has suppressed Gideon's soul somehow, and therefore that part that would be useful in a lictor has been removed. It's been effectively can't come to light. Relatedly, who is Gideon?
Oh, okay.
The title character in book 1.
Yeah.
So we realized at some point that we were confusing Gideons. Who?
Yes.
That there's Gideon the First, and then there's Gideon Nav.
At least we think.
We think. That's our hypothesis.
But, yeah, so then I had an interesting theory because one thing that pops up is that Pyrrha in the like original, like again, we went
We
in
talked
the first
about
book.
this last week,
We went way too far with naming conventions in the first book. Where if we had just taken the obvious answer, it would have been just so much better for us. And Pyrrha is literally just means flame red or just red. Gideon's got red hair, and so I still am on my theory that Gideon was one of God's like offspring, like a demigod. And so now I'm wondering if Gideon is the child of Pyrrha and God. And that's why we get Gideon's name yelled because...
I'm sorry.
No.
I just had this moment where I was thinking about anybody having sex with God and saying, oh God, oh God.
I've had the same thing of like, imagine like, I don't know, being 10,000-year-olds and being 10,000-year-old and like being like, want to have sex? And like, and he, like what? That just feels like something you stop doing at that point.
Dude, old, based on the STD rates in old people homes, that's like not a thing. In fact, they're hornier than everybody.
We just go harder.
Yeah. But yeah, so
oh God.
Current theory for
Dear
myself,
Lord.
at least, I don't think Brooke's on board with this, is that Gideon is the child of Pyrrha and God.
No, I'm not fully bought in on this, but I do really like the connection of Pyrrha and Gideon. Nav. I like the red hair thing. I like the Pandora's box association, but I'm not certain of that exact pairing. One other thing that now is a possibility. So last week I was like, maybe she's from off planet. Maybe was in a bone and flesh topped box at some point as a baby. I don't know. So like there's a new option here suddenly that she's ancient and has been revived. We kind of tried to talk through some options for who the woman that came down to Pluto with Gideon Nav as a baby would have been if she was screaming Gideon, 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 and we couldn't quite flesh out what we thought that was.
Yeah. All right. So the body hallucination.
Body hallucination. Who is it? Like, what I think more, what is it? Like, we had thoughts about it being something that came out of the tomb with Harrow. What does that make it?
Like a partial imprint or something, or like
a slip of power?
Yeah, like we know from the mysterious study of Dr. Sex that like spirits can that come back and kind of jump between things a little bit if it's there. So maybe it's like a fragment of the body in the tomb has implanted itself in Harrow, which would
make it less of a pure hallucination and a little bit more of something that you could actually have feelings toward.
And now this just popped into my head. It would also let her still do lictor things if she has another spirit inside her without having Gideon like being there fully. But that's just, again, rampant speculation. I just popped in. I have not fleshed that out at all. And then Brooke and I also, now we were looking at names and everything else. We think there's a chance, I don't know how confident we are in this, that Anastasia is the body in the tomb.
The girl's body in the tomb, or the one who became
a lictor but did not become a saint, but was responsible for setting up the ninth house.
Because what does Anastasia mean?
Anastasia literally means resurrection. And Samael is the name for the devil, or that was like
Anastasia's cavalier.
Yes, thank you, Brooke, for filling in the gaps that my brain is just jumping around in.
You're going.
It's like the fallen angel, the devil, like the one who rose up against God. So like, again, we're taking this literally. We don't exactly know, but Anastasia and Samuel are like would make sense if they're like the price of the resurrection, the enemy of God. Like they got stuck in the tomb sometime post-resurrection.
Yeah.
All right, so we got that. Now we need bad resurrection beast math. Yeah.
So where's the ninth resurrection beast? I have some thoughts. Maybe God lictored it, and that's why his eyes are black. Can you lictor a resurrection, a revenant? That doesn't make sense.
Well, it's just a giant soul, right? That's so like the whole thing. Is it like it's a giant soul? So like,
yeah, but
our theory that God lictored a planet. The
resurrection beast is already a revenant. But how do you lictor a soul that's not already part of a body? You have to stab a body.
Cannon House is a giant sword going into the planet. No, that's just ridiculous. Yeah, I assume we'll find out about the resurrection beast at a later date. But yeah, we're clearly missing one.
Well, then there's also the whole ninth house situation. We have a cost of we've got all these like clues about what's in the tomb. It's the cost of the resurrection, which now we know to be the formation of revenants, of resurrection beasts, of planetary revenants. Then there's the last little weird thing here is that anagram we found, which had Saturn in it, which in our theories we have 9 planets that are in our solar system, and those would be the 9 planets that got turned into revenants and into resurrection beasts, one of which could be Saturn.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how that connects to Gideon in the end, but maybe. Clues.
And then just the last thing I have here is that we're killing all these planets to prevent the resurrection beasts from feeding on them. We're like genociding the universe to prevent the spread of corruption, which I had, I think, a few weeks ago. We'll see if that actually pans out, but we're continuing on that side of things, which the Emperor is basically genociding these planets because it sounds like they feed on them via vampires. And if vampires can't get blood, they die. So if we can starve out the resurrection beast, that prevents the Emperor from having to fight them directly. And maybe that's what we're doing. We're slowly killing all these planets to weaken the resurrection beasts.
Yeah.
As you can see, we spent a lot of time on this.
We have a lot of ideas that are not concrete.
Yes.
I will say also, having seen the murder board, it is beautiful. So I'm actually pretty amped for the patrons to get to see it.
Hell yeah.
It is like gorgeous.
Hell yeah.
I guess we'll see if any of that happens next time when John and Brooke receive letters from themselves in Harrow the Ninth, chapters 3, 4, and 5.
What?
And if you, dear listener, are like Brooke and me, reading along for the first time, make sure you find our reading calendar on our website, frontline5th.podbean.com, or follow us on Instagram or TikTok, which are both linked in the show notes. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends and give us a 5-star rating anywhere you can. And if you didn't like it, feel free to lie. Now head off to sleep, my baby necros. Mommy and Daddy have some deep spoilers to discuss.
Get in, losers. We're going speculating.
Act 4. Terrible divinity.
Warning. This portion of the podcast is 98% spoilers and like 2% snickering.
Seriously, we will spoil anything and everything in the series up through Nona the Ninth. If that's not what you want, turn back now. Also, it's way more than 2% snickering.
I don't like the insinuation.
I saw that you were writing notes because, thank God.
Yes. Do you want to start with them?
Yeah, we should.
Okay, hold on. All right, so if we start with their notes, let's start with this. Holy shit, what an incredible call that indeed Ortus the First is Gideon the First, and that Harrow's brain is censoring the word Ortus vice versa, is censoring the word Gideon and replacing it with Ortus.
Yes.
And they also, so as I said, so this was something that I figured out very early on, but I did the same thing that Brooke did. I was just like, maybe she's like suppressed it because of grief. Brooke also had a different theory that I thought was wild and incorrect, but wild, that maybe it's suppressed for everyone, that maybe like the Emperor himself is saying Ortus instead of saying Gideon. But no, he's saying Gideon. That's why the lip shapes don't match the sound that Harrow is hearing.
The fact that it's an anagram, I was like...
oh my God. Sorry, that's the one I'm most excited about. I never, ever caught that, ever.
Ever.
And it's an anagram for Gideon Saturn. And here's the thing. Saturn, of course, is the Roman god equivalent of Kronos, who was this titan who ate all of his children because he knew that one of his children was going to come and kill him. And that's Zeus, who ends up like overthrowing him, and then you get the new gods. And I like the idea that John Gaius, the emperor, as Saturn, who's eating his children until someone can come and throw him over. And Gideon is like child of Saturn. So this is Gideon Saturn makes Ortus Nigenad, and I'm very fucking excited about it.
I do like that because I was like, I like that we can pull out Gideon, but I have no clue what to do with Saturn. And that just seems like a weird red herring, except that we know that Tamsin does bizarre shit like this. Because you know this about Nona, right? That like the John 3:15 or whatever, like that's a code.
No.
Oh, I think it's spelled, if you take that and you just say like 1 is A and B is 2, 2 is B, etc., it does spell out the tower is reactivated or something.
Oh my fucking God. All right, we'll get there when we get there. That's outrageous. She really does. She's an Easter egg queen.
Yeah, the only reason I pulled that up is to say that, like, yeah, Ortus Nigenad being Gideon Saturn shouldn't be discounted.
Everything has meaning. Yeah, I think everything is a hint to every other thing. They did a good job noticing the time delay. They noticed that actually she was able to think about and talk about Gideon in the epilogue of the first book when she's on Erebos and she's talking to God. But that now, some months later, it's gone. All of that is erased. So I think it's very interesting. And it's reasonable, again, to think, oh, this is grief causing some sort of psychological break.
But
it
we know
never
it's not.
occurred to me that Harrow would have fucking lobotomized herself in order to do this. I love it.
And I mean, I guess that brings up, like, I did make, again, if you're interested in the Patreon.
Oh God, I can't wait.
Basically, if you wanted to read Harrow the Ninth in chronological order, I have an order for that, because essentially the Epiparados, and then I think it's like chapter 19 and chapter 22, are out of chronological order.
Marie made like a really beautiful timeline of everything that's happening, because we think that, I mean, more broadly, I think the timeline, even of these 10,000 years, is really interesting and needs to be like,
yeah. So this isn't the
10,000
year timeline, but that's just the timeline of basically how long has it been since the first letter hits the ninth until the tomb opens in Nona. And it's about 2 years.
The other thing they talked about was, where is Gideon's soul? So beautifully, John thinks that the soul is in the sword. And
I think that the soul is a little bit in the sword.
I think so too. I think Harrow deliberately tied part of the soul to the sword. I think this is part of why she yells at herself for being bad at spirit magic, is that I don't think she did a great job. But I think that like part of the soul is in the sword, part of the soul is in Gideon. Yeah.
And part of the soul is in Harrow, and but part of it might be like in the body, right? Like, we've got some really weird soul swappy weird shit going on that we still don't quite have untangled, even in Nona. But it kind of is the whole reason. But I think that's interesting, because there's a couple of things she tells herself in the letter for next week. So maybe we can save it for the next week. But I think it does tie into this, like, where is Gideon? Is that Harrow specifically says you can't go back to the ninth house. And this is before she knows about resurrection beasts. So her not going back to the ninth house must have something to do with probably just that she would remember Gideon if she went back, or it would be too hard to not remember Gideon. So it's either
possible.
that, or there is some like magical reason why she shouldn't go back.
I also think that I really think that she had an encounter with Blood of Eden before she gets picked up. So I think that I think Harrow, before lobotomizing herself, actually receives more information than we as an audience know about. Okay. So I don't know what she knows. But she also tells herself how to deal with the sword and to deliberately do not use it on flesh or bone. Right. Which makes a lot of sense, because things can jump, and we think Wake does jump between from there into Kitharia's body. One thing that you brought up actually at this point was, you said Harrow still has lictor powers, right? Like, some amount of Gideon must be in Harrow. And I think that's true, but I think it's an interesting question. Like, how much do you need? Or are there discrete parts of a soul? Like, we're talking about a soul like it's one thing.
Have you read The Unwanted Guest?
Okay. I will read it.
I don't want to spoil it for you, but like, I feel like it's really important to this conversation of where is Gideon's soul, or what has happened to Gideon's soul while Harrow is becoming a lictor.
All right. Officially, I will read this, and we will address it next week during this part.
You better.
Okay, great.
I'm holding you to it.
Okay, so the other thing, John loves to just like keep going. So he was like, Gideon's soul might be in the sword, or maybe Kitharia's soul is in the sword. And I loved that. I was like, just keep going. Like, anybody's soul could be in there.
Just keep going. Also, Kitharia's soul, not her soul, but Kitharia's body and the sword have a weird intermingling that has implications later.
But not yet. The other thing they thought about was, who is Gideon Nav, right? And I actually really loved. So John is still thinks that she's God's child, which she is, and that's amazing. I love that they think that Pyrrha might be the mother because it means
red hair.
Red. And it's also funny because actually that is like a key way that you identify who is Gideon's mother. You're like, oh, nobody has fucking hair like that except for Wake, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's a very weird phenotype.
Well, also Gideon 1 has reddish hair.
This is true. And Giddy 1, although, not the father, was having sex with the mother. So this is, it's hard to tell. Any of these things could be true. How many sperm can fertilize a necromancer egg? Who knows? We don't know. They also, so it's cute to watch them do this. Brooke was like, maybe Gideon's an ancient revived body, all of the ones that he's sending to the ninth. They did bring up, why did Gideon's mom scream Gideon, 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 if the parents are God and Pyrrha or whatever it is? It's like not clear what's going on. So the other thing they talked a lot about was the body. They think, what I think as well, that something came out with Harrow when she entered into the tomb.
Mhm.
But I think that's the soul of Alecto, right? They think that the body might be Anastasia. And this actually goes to something you texted me.
About the timeline. So I was confused about the timeline, and I think that I have it figured out. In fact, I gotta go see. I think I wrote notes for it. So let me find my notes.
While you're looking, I absolutely love, I didn't look up the names. So I love that Anastasia means resurrection. And I love that Samael is like this fallen angel that fights against God. So fascinating.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot there. Okay, so I was trying to figure out the body. What is this timeline? Because in this chapter, we hear that the body only spoke to her for a year, and it hadn't spoken to her. She had only walked with a year, and then it never spoke to her again after she massaged the blood clots out of her parents' necks. So that basically the night that her parents died, it didn't talk to her again. So these are the quotes that I have. So in Harrow the Ninth, in this chapter, we get, he would not know in truth the body of the locked tomb had not spoken to you since the night you massaged the purple swollen clots out of the necks of your dead parents. Then it says, you had only walked with her one tranquil year. In your youth, her eyes had often been black like yours were, but ever since you had writhed in literal agony, her eyes had turned a yellow. When you were 10 years old, the body was quiet and rigorous. And then it went 14, it was, other words for quiet. At 17, other words for quiet. Okay. The end of chapter 3. It said she was 9 and she'd made a mistake. She was 17 and she'd made a mistake.
Yeah.
So I think the 9 there is a big indication. Now, the other thing is it says in Gideon the Ninth, you have this information of Gideon telling us that Harrow Nigenad chose to unlock it, and Gideon had been witness to that fact. Just hours before, she'd wrestled Harrow down in the dirt, and Harrow had scratched until she'd had half of Gideon's faith beneath her fingernails. And then Harrow, later in the pool scene, tells Gideon, beyond the doors there's just the rock and the tomb surrounded by water. Just know that it took me a year to walk 6 steps inside.
Yes. So like when she's 9, she fights Gideon, manages to open. It's the other way around?
Because what Gideon is talking about, that she had witnessed the fact, that is the day when Harrow is 10 and she is 11, that she goes and tells Harrow's parents, and that is when Harrow's parents die. But that doesn't work with Harrow is 9 and made a mistake.
Yes.
Okay, so it doesn't work with the body walked with her a year and then never talked to her again. So here is where we get to it. In Harrow, in the next chapters that we get, she says, one very bad day with bloodied fists and a bruised heart, she unlocked the door. She was much older before she could cross the threshold. It was trapped like all hell, but the traps were 9th traps. And then the next thing it says is she had been careless with her visits. Her parents had found out.
Right.
In that chapter, that's where it says she was 9 and she'd made a mistake. And then way later in Nona the Ninth, when they're talking about the tomb, basically there's the rock, and then even if you get the rock rolled away, there are traps. And so they basically talk about, I think Pyrrha says something about like once they get past the rock, she says, holy hell, look at all these booby traps. Somebody already did away with them.
Yeah.
And then Crux also mentions basically helping Harrow with her madness, because he sees Nona and he says, lady, you've gone away again. And Nona whispered, I'm sorry, I'm not Harrow Hark. And you've said that before.
Oh, that's fascinating that actually like Nona, or potentially Alecto, for a given amount of either of those existing, has possessed Harrow before.
Yes. So based on all of those quotes together, my supposition is we think that the only time that Harrow had Gideon's blood on her was that one time that Gideon remembers getting scratched bloody, watching her enter the tomb, and then going to tell the parents, which causes them to kill themselves. And that is when Gideon is 11 and Harrow is 10. But from here we learn that Harrow and Gideon were always fighting each other bloody, and that is referenced other places in the books.
Multiple places, yeah.
And so when she was 9, she rolled the rock away.
Which
and
presumably was the only thing that had the blood ward on it. The rest of it is like crazy traps inside, but the blood ward on the rock, that's like the thing that she needed Gideon's blood to surpass. Yes.
And then it took her a year to get past all the other traps. And she would visit it. There's another thing that I didn't put here for quotes, but she would visit it regularly for a year.
Yeah.
So when she was 9, she actually opens the tomb. When she is 10 is when Gideon sees her
finds out about it.
The tomb. Yeah. And I think that it's actually possible that who she is haunted by from 9 to 10 is Anastasia.
I love this because so obviously the eye color is like a big pivot, and we know how important eye color is, and that it tells you who is there. That is like what eye color tells you. I love the idea that this is Anastasia. I love the idea that she's haunted because Anastasia herself is sort of like embedded in some of these traps, in some of this like antechamber space that you have to pass by.
And it's described in Nona that like when Alecta wakes up and turns around, she sees Anastasia's bones behind the rock.
Yeah. So Anastasia actually also died in there, although this is interesting too. She must have had more than one child because there's such an obsession with the lineage of Anastasia, and we know that Samael gets killed. So like, I guess it's possible that Samael had a kid, which would also be part of the lineage. But yeah, I love this idea that she was haunted by Anastasia until she was haunted by Alecto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I mean, yeah, like she doesn't know what the body is, and that basically it's not just that she's like the haunting is like possession. And so it's both that like she is having these hallucinations. It is true that she, like at this point you can't untangle which of these things are like a magical thing and which of these things are like a reality that Harrow has to, or an unreality that Harrow has to deal with it. It's both.
Yeah. I really, just in general, like there's a moment when Abigail says in this book very explicitly, like, I don't think you were ever insane. And I kind of like that. I like the idea. So I was thinking about some of the things that we'll learn in the next chapter that she experiences are things like doors closing and like winds in the halls of Djerba, things like that like feel a little bit more not like a revenant necessarily. But one other thing I was thinking about was like a revenant comes with its own memories. I almost wonder like how much of what she's experiencing is true, but not in the timeline that she's experiencing it in. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is fucking souls are so like missable that we really know that they can get tangled up in a way that makes it almost impossible to untangle them. And the little clues matter. Yeah, I think this is great. Do you want to move on?
Yeah.
The other thing that they mentioned, which was the thing I wanted to mention, was I love this. There's a beautiful moment when Harrow says like that she basically didn't have time to question his mathematics on the resurrection beasts. Mm-hmm. So he tells her that there were 9 and there's now 3. And that they've taken out 5, which does not add up. The obvious answer that we can say there is there was no 9th resurrection beast. It is Alecto. It is Earth. And they did actually kind of pull out that idea. They were like, maybe God lictored it, and that's why his eyes are black, is what Brooke said directly.
True,
and I was like,
but they don't realize the timeline. They don't realize that there was essentially never that like there is a resurrection beast because he can't absorb the entire soul. And he does kill Earth.
Yes. John said this crazy thing. He said Canaan House is a giant sword going into the planet. And I was like, holy fuck, it might be.
I know. I had that moment too where I was like sure. Yeah.
This is part of like the lictor processes. You have to stab them to fix the soul in place so that it can't get away. And I was like, oh my God, what if this is actually just straight up true? So I love that as an aside that we'll come back to 1,000 years from now. There are 2 more things I wanted to mention that are a little bit like off. I don't know if they're totally off. So there's 10 bundles of discrete dead, and I have counted them. There's Cytherea, Marta, Babs, Jean-Marie, Isaac, Abigail, Magnus, Silas, and Colum, and then there needs to be one more. So it could either be the little bits of Palamedes, or it could be Protesilaus' head. And I could see either of those being true. But the way
we're told specifically
Harrow,
that Pal is there.
We're told that there are little body parts in that coffin, but the way she describes it, she says that the 6 coffins were empty. One was totally empty and one had little bits. And so it was this weird little thing. So I think it's Palamedes as well, but I just wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, no,
the other
I'm
thing
pretty sure
that
it's Palamedes.
Where there's a discrepancy is she says the only one draped in third house colors is empty, and that's obviously Corona's. But Babs should be there too. So, like, low-key, this is not important, but my guess is that Babs is there but unmarked because they're not sending the lictor bodies home. The fantasy is that the Cavalier...
The Cavaliers have joined their lictors.
Exactly. So... that's there. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up,
because I wasn't paying attention to the fact that Babs's body isn't there to be sent home. Of course, they're not going to send it home, and then they're going to use it. Yeah,
then they're going to use it. Yeah, 100%. So the other thing is this little throwaway comment that goes to something that you were talking about to me that I hadn't thought about. So he says, "I wish I had done the smarter thing and mastered time instead of mastering death." Emperor John Gaius wishes that he had mastered time. And this sort of goes to some of the theories about the faster than light travel and the way in which it might have been messed up and the way in which he may be still searching, right? You were saying at the end of our As Yet Unsent episode that he may still be searching to find these last fucking douchebag billionaires. So that's all I've got. You have one more thing where your note says, low-key, where the fuck has he been hiding however many set-aside bodies he has? In Canaan House. You think it's just like in Canaan House in the facility?
I think it's in the facility and in the parts that like everybody's like there's stuff running alongside the facility. Like Abigail says that later when she's like looking at the facility. Like there's like parallel things. I think that everything is still there in
totally
House.
Stored there and maybe embedded in the river, which keeps it kind of prime, untouched by time as well as death. I love that.
Yeah. Well, and he also says like weird things about the bodies of like he's going to begin the process of like bringing them back to the surface. And it's like, so what if those souls like they've just been chilling in the river, but they're fine?
Well, so this makes me wonder, like, if part of the reason there's so many fucking devils on the 9th when we get back to it in Nona is that those bodies were not good bodies. Those bodies were infected by devils already.
Or just the fact that you cannot wait that long.
And still be a person.
Like, that is what the devils are the souls that have been in the river for 10,000 years rather than passing beyond like they're supposed to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry. I actually do have one more. This is another question is mathematics. So he says that they've killed 5 of the resurrection beasts, but this is something I got into a little snit about. He specifically mentions only 3. He says number 2 fell shortly after the resurrection. Number 8 cost a man his immortal soul. Number 6 died because Cyrus drew it into a black hole. And then just keeps going. It would be really easy for him to just list the other 2. So there's this like tiny part of me that's like, maybe they haven't actually taken out 5. Maybe they've only taken out 3. Maybe there were only 6. Anyway, so this may mean nothing, but I just wanted it to be in the space because maybe. Everything could be meaning. Yeah.
Well, Act 5. See you next time, my little nunlets. We're out of time to speculate because any second Harrow's gonna barf again. But don't worry, at least we've got some class back next time when Ianthe shows up in Harrow the Ninth, chapters 3, 4, and 5. If you want to follow along with us, our reading calendar is available on our website at frontline5th.podbean.com, and you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok, which are linked in the show notes. If you enjoyed this podcast, please tell your friends and give us a 5-star rating anywhere you can. And of course, if you didn't enjoy the podcast, feel free to lie. We have a Patreon, which you can join for access to bonus content every month. You can become a patron, aka a fellow cackling bone witch, at patreon.com/frontline5th. Finally, if you have any fun theories you'd like to share with us, feel free to email us at frontline5th@gmail.com. And with that, I'll just remind you not to unlock any tombs or enter any doors without permission because, ghosts. Bye!
Frontline 5th is a Locked Tomb podcast conceived by Marie Adamako and starring Marie Adamako, Hannah Grunwald, Brooke Anderson, and John Ryan. Our cover art was designed and created by Marie Adamako, who also edited this episode. Our fabulous music was composed and recorded by Blake Anderson. The Locked Tomb series is a completely dope-ass book series by Tamsin Muir, who does not know we exist and is in no way affiliated with this podcast.